In this tutorial, you learn how to write a custom tool for Premiere Pro with the extension automation blocks to quickly import your favorite footage. I need our logo animation, for example, in almost every project. So I just choose logo animation here and run the tool, and it imported it into the project and also inserts it in the active sequence. If I choose automation blocks icon instead, it inserts the icon and also scales and positions it exactly where I need it usually. If you want to create such an automation tailored exactly to your workflow, in this tutorial I explain how it's done. Hello and welcome to this Premiere Pro tutorial. I'm Matthias from mamoworld and I want to show you how to automate your own workflows with automation blocks for Premiere Pro. In automation blocks you can literally automate anything and write your own custom automations. And today I've got some example here prepared for you. So automation blocks comes with tons of ready-to-use examples. Here a big collection of tools that are ready to use. But this time I made a custom tool which I named Insert Favorite Clip. And this I use to insert some clips in my timeline that I use all the time in my project. So there are two things I need all the time. This is my logo animation for mamoworld and the automation blocks icon. And in the tool I created here, I can just say, please give me the logo animation. Note that at the moment there is nothing in the project yet, and if I run it, it imported my logo animation in the footage folder and inserted it here at the current time in my timeline. And if I say instead, please give me the automation blocks icon and run it again, run, this time you can see I've got the automation blocks icon here in my timeline. It was also imported in my footage folder, and it was also positioned correctly. So it was not just inserted. If I go here to the effect controls, you can see the position and the scale have been adjusted to have it exactly where I want it to be. So all of this can be customized with automation blocks, and all of this entire tool, including creating this cool user interface with a drop down here, making sure these files are imported here in the footage folder, and also, for example, making sure that it's not imported multiple times. So if I say, please give me my automation blocks icon here again, you can see it is inserted a second time in my timeline, but in the footage folder, I still have just this one instance here. So how do you program all of this with automation blocks? Well, it's super easy. It's just block code. Let me just maximize this window here by double clicking on it. The entire code for this automation, including importing these two tools and creating the user interface, is this here. That's all you need, and it might look a bit scary, but we will do this now step by step. Let me resize this, and let's say we create a new script. And so the first thing we want to do is to just keep it simple and import one file in our project. Yeah. So here you've got the block list, which contains all the different categories of blocks that you can use in automation blocks. And here you've got the Premiere Pro related one. So this is general logic. This here is handling files and creating user interfaces. And here you've got the blocks which are related to Premiere Pro, and we want to import some project items in the project. So this must be either in project or in project items. But project items is actually just about accessing something of individual project items, and here are the general project handling blocks, and one of them is sync folder. This allows you to import an entire folder from your hard drive in Premiere Pro, and import files. So this block allows you to import a file. And if you want, for example, to import our logo animation, we can just choose it here, click open, and now it will import this file in your project. By default, it goes in the root folder. So let me quickly check this. So if we run the tool, you can see you've got a new copy of your logo animation file here in the root folder of your project. And if you want to have it in a different bin, let's say in the bin footage, and we click here on load, on refresh, then you can see it inserts here /footage, which means at the root of your project you must have a bin footage, and there it should be imported. Yeah. And let me just, for the sake of a test, delete this entire folder here. Selection, yes, we want to delete all of this. And if we now run the tool again, you can see it created this folder for me. It noticed that it's not here and imported the file here. So just specify here the file you want to import, and here the folder or the bin in the project where it should go. Now this has one little issue so far. If we run the tool a second time, it will import a second copy, which we do not want. Yeah? So to avoid this, we want to first check if this file already exists. If it exists, so we need some logic, we need some if logic block, and we drag this inside here to say this should only happen if certain condition is satisfied, namely if this file has not been imported yet. Yeah? So how do we do this? We want to figure out something about a project item, namely whether an individual project item exists or not. So we go here to project items and check all the blocks, and one of them is project item exists. And you can see it from the shape already. It has these sharp corners, so this is a condition. It says yes or no, is this the case? So you can plug this in here. Now we want to know which project item. Project item exists in the active project. Now I could enter here a name like foo.jpg. Now it would search the entire project for an item foo.jpg and check if it exists. If we would write here /foo, it would say this must be in the root folder. And if we say footage /foo, for example, it would say I want to know if there exists a file foo.jpg in the bin footage. Yeah? But there's an easier way to find an actual, or to find this text here, this string for a particular item if it's already in your project, because then you can just select it here and click on this refresh item, and now it inserts exactly the text you need. So in the bin footage, the item mamoworld logo any.mov is the one that we want to check if it exists. Now, everything you plug inside of this if, in this blue if here, will be executed now only if this is the case. But we want to import it if the project item does not exist, not if it exists. So we need to like flip this condition here. So we go to the logic block and choose the not and drag it right in between here. So now we've got if not project item exists, this particular project item, then we want to import it. So we do a quick test. Delete this here again and run the tool, and it imports the file. I run the tool a second time, and this time it does not import the file anymore. Yeah? So that's cool. Now, next we want to insert it in our sequence. So guess what? You find the right block for this in Premiere Pro sequence. And let's see where we find one. This one says add project items. So you can insert one or multiple project items here. And which project item do we want to insert? Well, you can enter here again such a path. So I could copy and paste this here, or just select it and click refresh. So the project item in the bin footage with name mamoworld logo any in the active project should be inserted in track 1. Let's say we want to have it in track 3, for example. Doesn't really matter. Of the active sequence. And where do we want to have it? At the end of the sequence? No, let's have it here at the current time indicator. So at the player position. If we want it at the player position, it still needs to know what happens if there is already something here in track 3. So we want to overwrite what is there. It could also shift stuff to the side if you want. Let's check if this is working now. So at this point here, we want to have our logo animation run, and you can see, bam, right here, it is inserted for you at track 3. And the cool thing is you can really customize all of this. If you say, I want my logo usually to be in track 2, you can easily update this here. Now let's say we want to have a user interface, because you want to have, or in other words, you could save this here now as a tool, let's say, insert logo, save, and now in your library, in the user library, you have the tool insert logo. And yeah, then you could have another one, insert automation blocks icon, or whatever files you want to have. And for each of them, you could write their own tool. But we want to have, like we have it here, a single tool with a user interface where I can pick which of the tools which of the clips I actually want to insert. Yeah. So let's modify our tool here to add such a user interface. Let me maximize this here. For this, we need blocks in the user interface and comments category. And the most important one is this one, input of type. And you can see as soon as I drag this input here, here a user interface element appears. So we can have a single line text, we can have a multi-line text, and you can see how this updates, or we can have a number, all kinds of user interface elements. The one we actually want to have is a drop-down list. And by default, it says option 1, option 2, option 3. And you can just insert here different options separated by such a vertical bar. Yeah. So I want to say either I want my logo animation or I want my automation blocks icon. So now I've got this here in my dropdown. Yeah. And I say here clip, for example. And now it mentions clip here as a label. So this is just what text you want to have here. Now this block evaluates to a value, which is either logo animation or automation blocks icon. Yeah. So in other words, whatever you have here, depending on what you've chosen here, now this entire block here is the text automation blocks icon. And now this entire block here represents the value logo animation. And we want to use this throughout our tool here multiple times, so we want to save this in a variable. So we create a variable and name this one, let's say option clip. So this means the option the user has chosen here as clip, but you can really give this variable any name you want. And at the beginning of our script, we now want to save this value in the variable option clip. Yeah. So in other words, this variable option clip now either has the value logo animation or the value automation blocks icon. Now we want to use now an if statement to check which of those two values the user has actually chosen. So we go to the logic category here and say we want to check what this variable is. So the variable you can see here is now the variable option clip in my variables section after we created it, and you can create more variables if you like. So option clip, we want to check if it's equal to something. So we go to logic and say, is option clip equal to, and now we need to put in here some text. So we go to the text category and find here the basic text block. And we want to check if it's logo animation and make sure to copy this exact text. It must be exactly identical because again, option clip will have either the value logo animation or automation blocks icon. So now we say if option clip equals logo animation, so if this is the case, then everything in here will be executed. What do we want to execute in this case? Well, all of this. Well, this is a program we wrote for importing a logo animation. So you can just drag this in here. And now all of this will only be executed if option clip is logo animation. So if we've chosen logo animation here. Let's do a quick test for this. So we go here somewhere else in the timeline and run the tool. Now the logo is inserted. If we go here somewhere else again and now choose the other option, automation blocks icon, and run the tool again, you can see it's not inserted. Yeah, great. Now you could have another if statement and say if option clip equals automation blocks icon. You can even reuse this block here and just go on this icon and say we want to add an else if condition. Yeah, so if not this is the case, but something else is the case, and we duplicate our condition here. Say if instead option clip equals automation blocks icon, as this would be our second option here. So if instead the chosen option is automation blocks icon, what do we want to do? Well, effectively we want to do all of this also. So we duplicate it. Just this time we want to do it with, let me just maximize this again. So we want to do this again, but this time with a different footage item, right? So let me first choose here where I import the file, the one that I want to import now, and this is automation blocks AI. I just copy here the name to make sure I get the exact name of it. Open. And I insert this now first here where I check if the footage file exists. So now we want to check if in the footage bin the automation blocks.ai project item exists. And also here where I want to insert it, I just paste this. And again, instead of cutting and pasting this text, you could also just import the footage in your project and then use this refresh icon here to link to it in the project panel directly. Now for the fun of it, let's say this is inserted in track 2, for example. And now let's check if this is actually working. So we go here and have automation blocks icon chosen and run the tool. And you can see the icon is inserted in track 2. And if we instead choose here logo animation and run, you can see the logo animation is inserted in track 3. Now what I don't like about the logo is the actual placement of it. This is also something we can automate here. So we can extend our script to say, well, this should be placed somewhere else. So we go here to the effect controls and say this should first of all be much smaller, say maybe 25%, and it should be located, let me just move here the position X and Y. Let's say it should always be positioned here. So after inserting, we want to also change its location, so to speak. Yeah? Okay. How do we do this? This means here we had our check if the project item exists, and if not, we imported it. Here we've inserted it in the sequence. And now we want to change some clip parameters, namely its position and scale. So here you've got sequence clips, which contains blocks how to modify individual clips. And the first thing we need to do is to find the clip we actually want to modify, because this time we cannot just provide its footage name, because the footage could have several occurrences in several sequences. And so the tool would not know which one exactly it should modify here, which one's position you want to modify. So we need to tell it something like the clip at the current time, because this is where you just inserted this item, at track 2 in this case. Yeah. So how to do this? We go use this green block for this and say for each clip at current time as my clip in track video 2 of the active sequence. It says for each because there are choices which have multiple results. Yeah, for example, if you say in all video tracks, then there could be multiple clips at the current time. Yeah, and then it would call everything inside of here for all of these clips at the current time. But if we just say for track V2, then there is just one such clip in V2 at the current time. Yeah, so you can be sure that everything you nest inside here will be called exactly one time, and when it's called, the variable myClip, this is why it says as myClip, will contain exactly this clip. Yeah, so this means now we like this block effectively says find the clip at the current time in track V2 and store it in the variable myClip, and then execute everything you stack inside here with myClip set to this clip. Might sound a bit technical, but I think you get used to it if you've seen some examples. Important, you've got here now this variable myClip in your variables, so this block created it for you, and it points to this clip that we just inserted here. Now we want to change something, namely we want to change clip parameters. Clip parameters are all these things you can see here in the effect controls, also including any effects you applied to your clip here, but also something like the position and the scale. So clip parameters, we've got here the block for the parameter given here, of the clip given here, set the value to something. This is what we need. Yeah, so we nest it inside here, and this block which sets the value of a parameter needs to know which parameter do you want to modify. We want to set, for example, the scale, which is by default 100, and it needs to know of which clip. By default, it inserts here such a text that is similar to these texts we have here, for example. So this says project item automation blocks AI in the bin footage, and this here says in the active sequence. This is like : is a abbreviation for the active sequence, and in video track 1 use the first clip. Yeah, this would be here in this case we don't have anything in video track 1, so this would fail, for example. But we don't want to hard code here a particular clip, but we want to insert here my clip. Yeah, whatever clip is at the current time, this is the one from which we want to set the clip parameter scale. We want to set the value. We can also change the value if you want, but we want to set it to something. Let me get here a math block to get a number. We want to set this one to 25. If the clip does not have this parameter, do nothing, and if the parameter has keyframes, delete the keyframes. This really doesn't matter because we don't have keyframes. We are sure we just inserted this, so this value is definitely not keyframed. Let's check if it's working so far. So we make sure it's set here to automation blocks, our parameter, and we run the tool. And you can see it is inserted, and this time it's scaled down. So if we click on it, you can see the scale is set to 25%. Cool. Now we also want to update its position. We want it to be here. Now for position, it's exactly the same. So we can duplicate this block and insert it here. And we choose here the position. And as value, we now need to get two values, right? Because position has two values, the X and the Y. So what we need to put there is a list. We set here a list and use just two items. So if you click on this here, you can add more or less items to a list. In this case, we just need two for the X and the Y. Yeah. So we set this clip or the position of this clip to two math values. And you probably think you can enter here hard-coded values like 252 and 228. Yeah, 252. But this is actually not going to work. Internally, Premiere Pro stores values as numbers between 0 and 1. So 0, 0 is this corner here, and 1, 1 is this corner here. And the middle of the composition is 0.5, 0.5, for example. So this might sound like a bug, but it's actually a feature, because this means if you want to center something in your composition, you can set it to 0.5, 0.5, and no matter how big your comp is, it will always be placed there. Yeah. So this is just how Premiere Pro works internally, and we have to do the same. So we could, for example, set this here to 0.25, 0.25, which is 1/4, right? To put it here around at a quarter of the entire height and a quarter of the entire width. But wouldn't it be nice to get exactly the position where it is now? And you can actually do this too. And for this, we use a little trick, and this is this refresh icon. Let me explain. Here you choose which parameter you want to have, and it also contains the default values here after the name. So for example, this list says the position in the motion category, yeah, motion position, has a default value of 0.5, 0.5, and is an array too, so a list with two elements. So you here can see by default it has a center position, which is 0.5, 0.5. Now, if we select this clip here and click on refresh here, it retrieves all the parameters from exactly this icon and puts them in this list. Now you can see the position value changed. Yeah, it's 0.1312. We don't need really the full accuracy here, right? 0.1312. 0.1312. And the second entry was 0.2111, let's say. 0.2111. So let's just check if this is working. Delete the clip and run the script, and you can see it jumps exactly here in the corner where we want it to be. So wow, this was quite a lot of content. Let me quickly summarize everything you've learned here. So first of all, in this tutorial you learned how to import project items and how to use if statements to check if the project item exists before we actually import it, to avoid to import multiple copies. Then you learned how to insert project items into the active sequence and how to create a user interface by first storing an input here in a variable and then doing a case distinction to check for the different cases. Yeah, did the user choose a logo animation here or the automation blocks icon here? And depending on this, either this code or this entire code will be executed. And then finally, you also learned how to find the clip in the active sequence at the current time using this fancy green block here, and then to set some parameters of this clip. Yeah, like to set its scale and its position. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to learn more, you can right-click on any block and click on Help to open a documentation of exactly this block. And in the section here, PR Writing Custom Tools of the Automation Blocks documentation, you find more tutorials which show you how to write your own automations in Premiere Pro. That's it for today. I'm Matthias from mamoworld, and all that is left is now showing you the full logo animation that we used in this tutorial too.